What is up? All right. So, if you listen to our podcast or you're unaware that we have a podcast, every Friday we put out a podcast, talk about everything we're working on. But this week's podcast, in this week's show, I talked about a stone wall. I must be bleeding. Don't mind the blood, everyone. All right. Oh, there we go. I must have hit my finger. Well, I think I'll be okay. I think I'll survive this one. Anyways, let's move on. I talked about how we are using stone molds and wall molds from a company called Sterling Models. So I briefly went over in the show how I colored my walls for the achieved look, and the photos in the show description for this week's episode. But I wanted to do a quick video to show you guys how I did that. So you're really only going to need a couple things. I have my dark India ink wash. Don't ask me the mixture. I just have a dark and a light. I'm going to use a sponge. I got this brush that I only use for applying my India ink wash because it is a crusty, nasty brush. Paint palette, and then 3 colors of paint. I'm using Snowflake White, Slate Gray, and Barnwood. I don't want to use Barnwood. Let me find a different one real quick. Okay, found the other one I wanted. I grabbed the wrong one by accident. Boulder. I want to use Focus. Boulder. All right. So hopefully everyone's having a great weekend. We're going to show you how we did this. So these are just Hydrocal walls. They set up really nicely. I wish I had the mold with me right now, or the form, but my dad has it over his place. So what I'm going to do real quick is put my dark ink wash on. It is going to look almost black. That's okay. It soaks in extremely quick. This is just a sample wall. Well, not a sample wall, but like a dud wall. We might be able to use it somewhere else, actually, but it's just one that we didn't end up placing where I cast these walls for. So it's great for a demo. All right. So there's a couple of sections that are lighter. I'm going to go back over them. Real quick, this is just a simple India ink wash. Nothing complicated. And I just want this to be really dark. I want all of the lines and cracks and everything to be really saturated. Okay, I'm just going to set that there for a second and let that dry. It'll dry quick because it is an India ink, and this Hydrocal just soaks it up like a sponge. Okay, the India ink is dry. You can see just what that gets you. Not bad effect. Yeah, you can see there's a couple defects in this. There's like a bubble there, a couple bubbles we weren't happy with, but we can still use this for demo purposes. All right, that's dry. It actually looks pretty cool on its own like that, but here is what I'm going to do next. So we have our darker acrylic paint. I'm going to just put a little, just put a little bit in each. That's probably too much. Put a little bit in my dirty palette. Of each paint. And we're going to work from, that's way too much white. All right, we're going to work from dark to light. We want to finish with the white paint. So I'm going to get my tablet. We'll start a new page. And I like this sponge because the textures of it are really open. You'll see here on other sponges a few other textures that you have. I like to have a couple on hand just for different effects. This one has a more of a closed cell. This one's like the one I have in my hand, an open cell. This one's another nice one for like peeled paint, like a paint chipping effect, just because of the smaller holes. So it's cool to have a couple different variety of sponges, but we're going to use this more open one here for today's purposes. So I'm going to find a part of the sponge I really like the texture of. Doesn't have to be too specific. And we're going to basically just dry sponge on the block wall in like a, just a random pattern. I don't want to completely cover it. But I do want the darker layer here to cover more than the lighter layers as we go along. But I still want to be able to see that India ink wash below it. Adds a lot of depth. Okay. That's good with step 1. We're going to let that dry, and we're going to come back and do step 2, which is the bolder paint. Okay, our paint is dry. We're going to go back now with our coating number 2, lighter color. And I picked the bolder because it's got some browns in it too. It's not it's got some warmer, if you see it on a palette here, it's got some warmer tones in the gray. Some browns, kind of a reddish tone. It's not straight up gray. So with this, I want it to look like, see the pattern I'm making on my tablet? I want it to be like that. Kind of spotty. Kind of like that, but over here. So we're just going to gently, we're putting it on, but we're not putting it on as thoroughly as the bottom layer of the first gray we put on. What color was that? Slate gray. And you can leave some areas darker, less covered. Okay, and this is just getting the tops of the blocks. So you can see that is layer number 2. We're going to let that dry for a second again, and we'll be right back for the white coat. Okay, that gray bolder color is dry. You can choose to leave it like this with just 2 colors and your India ink wash. That's okay. You don't need to do the white. I like the white, just a light amount of white, because I think it adds a lot of contrast. And you can always weather it down later to be a little bit darker, or to be a little less prominent white. But here, let's see how this works. See if you guys like this. If you don't, like I said, you don't have to do this step. But I just very lightly add my white paint. I'm going to find a different part of the sponge, because I'm not... Oh! We just made a little dollop in there. Shoot. Yeah, that's okay. Brush it out a little bit. Good thing it's just for a demo. Alright. And we're just going to lightly hit some of the stones. You definitely don't want to get all of your stones on this one, or your blocks. This technique I also think works pretty good on stones as well. If you have rock molds, I like to go over with a little bit of white paint, and that's it. I'm not going to do any more white paint on there. You can totally go back later and use your chalks, your weathering pigments or whatever, and add a couple, some browns if it's near the ground, or add some staining on the blocks. Maybe, you can go back later and, stain a rock, or I keep saying rocks, stain a stone or two, so that way they're a little bit different color. In fact, let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's dry this real quick. Before I go ahead and put on my weathering chalks, you'll see what this does. The lighter and lighter you apply it, you can see that the lighter color paints only get put onto the areas of the block that are standing up. And I love these rock molds and these stone molds that we use, because you can just see, if I hold them up like this, you can see how much texture is in those molds. They're incredible. I love them. Really deep castings, and you can make them over and over and over again. As much hydrocal as you have, you can reuse them. I wish I had the mold, like I said, to show you guys, but they're fantastic molds. So I'm going to go through and make a couple blocks, different colors real quick with some weathering pigments, and just show you guys how I would weather it, and then we'll call this one a wrap. Okay, I have my weathering pigments here in my handy dandy container for them. We're going to push it to the side like that. Okay. I don't use any name brand weathering pigments. I just get them at the craft store, and then use a miniature, I don't know where I put it, but a miniature cheese grater, and I pick my chalks down and put them in my container. So I'm just going to get some browns on a couple of these. Add a little bit of variation to just some random blocks. There's no rhyme or reason which ones I'm picking. I'm just picking some at random. Let's do that one. And that one. Okay. Let's do a quick pass over to get them. And let's do some black. Darken a few of them up. You don't want to do every stone in the wall, but doing a couple chosen at random is good. Yeah, we have some guys that'll say that it's hard sometimes to pick a random one and you end up going into a pattern. I just like to say, like, when you're picking, my whole philosophy is the first one my brush touches. That's how I just pick at random. If you're having a hard time choosing a specific stone to randomize. Okay, let's get a little bit of white actually, and just lighten a few of them up. And then to wrap up this wall, I'm going to get this fan brush and just get a little bit of gray pigment and just tone down my wall, just making sure that all of my tones are nice and soft, but still has some pop to them, So there we go. That's how I would do a wall. Some of the stones I will probably go back over in a little bit more detail. But that's like my quick little, 10 or 12 minute fast wall painting and weathering technique. I do that with a lot of our cast stones, and I think it has a pretty cool technique. And from a distance, man, it just makes a really awesome looking rock wall or block wall. So hopefully that helps you guys, and now you get a better visualization of what I was talking about from what I was doing on the layout over here. We got a lot of stuff glued down, so I've been working on that quite a bit. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit the subscribe and the thumbs up button. That way you get notifications of all of our podcasts and videos when we do put them up. That'd be awesome. So again, thanks guys, and I hope you have an awesome evening.